Welcome to the March 22nd, 2026 meeting of the PCR Coast Division. This is our Saturday virtual meetup. We have a great program today. We're going to start with talking about a few upcoming events. That'll actually be me and not Jesse. I wasn't sure at the time I made these slides. Then we have a presentation by Earl about tracks in the street. He's actually modeling an industrial area and putting tracks into the street. And he's going to talk about how he's doing that. And then we'll just drop into coast modeling. So a few comments on upcoming events. In 2 weeks, on April 4th, we will be doing a modeling on the coast. We had 6 modelers last time. It would be great if we had more this next time. So if you've been building a model or even have a model that you built years ago and have some photos of and like to talk about, send those to me. You can use the email there, the coastsup23@gmail.com. And what I'll do is I'll put those together into a PowerPoint. And all you have to do is come on and talk about them. If you think you may not be able to come, send me a little write-up when you send the email about what the model is. If you haven't, send me a picture of yourself so we can put those pictures in as well, so everybody knows who each presenter is as we go through the modeling on the coast. It's a great way to show your models. We had some really cool models last time, and that is available on the Coast Division YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch what we did there on the January 24th. We have a trip planned to Roaring Camp on April 11th. I know that's the same weekend that the big boys in town, but you can go to Portola Valley and see it in Portola Valley, and then go do this event on April 11th. That's a Saturday. We're going to be at Roaring Camp. We'll be there to watch the steam up in the morning from 8 to 10. That's when they steam up the locomotives for the day for the trip up in the Redwoods, generally the Shea and the Heisler. Pretty cool. You get to talk to the crews while they're steaming up, talk to them about what they do for maintenance, etc. Then we'll have a shop tour. The shop tour will be about 10:45, I think, is the time frame. The CCC ON30 layout, which is pictured here, will be open all day. You can stop by, see them, run a train if you want to. At noon, we have one of the narrow gauge train rides up into the hills. That'll actually, there's a discount. It's a $2 discount on the ticket for that. So if you're interested, do that. If you look in the Coast Extra, we put a little sign up form up on Google. So if you're going to want to go on the train, sign up there. There's also how to buy the discounted tickets is in the latest Coast Extra. So basically, you go to the website and you use a code there on the website. So go ahead and do that. That's going to be a fun day. And then there will be some layouts open in the afternoon. We're closing on exactly which layouts will be open. The PCR convention is April 30th to May 3rd. That'll be up in Roanoke Park. There's some really cool activities there. The Sturgis Mill will be open on Saturday. If you've never been there, that's a steam-powered rotary circular blade sawmill. Very cool to go see it operating. But lots of great clinics and layout tours, etc., up in the north area, up in the Marin northern area. We are planning our next coast auction on June 14th. That's a Sunday. It'll be in Alameda at the Alameda Senior Center, where you've had it the past few times. Easy in and out. We're going to have some great items. We're going to have some more of these state items as we had in the last one. We'll have some auction items, detail parts just available. So if you have extra items, if you're changing scales, you've over accumulated, it's a great way to sell those. There are more details in the Coast Extra. And last but not least, the 2026 NMRA National Conventions in Chattanooga. If you go on the website, you can see the website link here. Pretty cool convention planned. Also an interesting area. There are a whole bunch of Civil War battlefields, etc. Some very interesting railroading in the area, and lots of clinics and layout tours and operating sessions, etc. Pretty reasonable. I got a hotel, the convention hotel, when I went to try to book it, was booked up. I got a hotel close by, I think for just right around $100 a night. So pretty reasonable once you get there to stay. So with that, I'm going to throw this over to Earl, and Earl is going to talk about tracks in the street. So Earl, it's all up to you.
Okay, so I assume that you're seeing my cover slide.
Hmm. We sure are.
Okay, so after all this time, I've been starting to work on my home layout, which I haven't done since I've been tied up helping kind of everyone else's layout. And, I kind of grew up on the East Coast and I grew up with, these kind of dingy areas and things like that. And also influenced by this guy. This is one of the street scenes from the Franklin, South Manchester. I've always liked this, the crusty old street. And you see this center building kind of has lights inside. And this was actually the picture that got me started putting lights in buildings. So I have kind of a funky triangular shaped area on my layout that looks kind of like this. So I grabbed some buildings that I had laying around. Uh, and then the blue kind of represents the street. So I was just laying these buildings in, looking to see if this was something viable. And I kind of liked what I had. And, again, where I grew up, a lot of the streets were brick. So in times past with my 3D printer, I've printed brick sidewalks. And you can see the one up top has a curb. And, so I figured that I'm in good shape to make brick streets with the rails really embedded. I didn't want to do inserts because there's gaps, and also the flangeways tend to be miles deep, right? They tend to be a pit because you're having to have clearance for the little plastic things that grab the rails on the ties. So I thought I'd print my own brick panels. And it's only a switching area. So it's not critical if things are a little bit kind of loose and all that. So I want to talk a little bit about, reality with using the 3D printer, problems I had with it, and then kind of where I ended up. So before I start things, usually I go to Google and I take a look at Google Images and see what the prototype does. And again, the bricks go right up to the rails. Some have the girder rails, but a lot of it, things like this in the lower right corner, you can see the bricks go right up to the rails. And again, I didn't want a big gap down in there. And I wanted to print the street panel full width. Again, not trying to do individual pieces. So I started off making some test pieces. And this is Tinkercad. And what you do in Tinkercad, again, is, you pull in shapes and extrude them and size them and all that. So the red is the rail, the blue is the flangeway, and the little green bevels actually are going to become negative space. You're trying to make, a composite of the rail. So you make a solid, then you convert the solid to a hole. So these are now negative space. Then you merge that with a solid. And now I've got uh, my little test piece. So I've got, relief here for the base of the rail. I did a little relief on the bottom, knowing I was going to have to slide the rail through. So trying to have some relief. This is my flangeway. And then the little sticky outies are kind of the retainer for the top of the rail. So this is what I drew. And, when you're doing these drawings, you're playing with, thousandths of an inch or tenths of millimeters, and you can draw whatever you want, but, reality sometimes kind of bites you in the butt. So after you draw something, you dump it into what's called a slicer. And what that does is create a program to tell the printer what to do. And you can see these are all, kind of different layers. The red is an outside wall. The blue here is a support. This turquoise thing is just something this printer does to get resin or filament flowing. So I had my little test piece. And again, these are like an inch square. I didn't want to spend a lot of time printing big things. um, because I knew I was going to have to go through a couple different iterations. So this is what the slicer came up with, though, is my little retainer over here for the rail was only one layer thick, and the layer is, 2/10 of a millimeter. So, not much space. It also put in this blue support on this side, but then if you look at the other side, I don't have the blue support here, and I don't have the retainer for the inner rail. And by the way, the blue support is something that you pull out or strip out later. So even though I drew it and it was perfect, the slicer didn't really do what I wanted it to do. But I went ahead and printed it, and I went through a number of different iterations that you can see here. And I was playing with the rails sliding in fairly tight, but not being so tight that I would bend things. You can see I've got a pretty good little flangeway here. The problem, the ends of the print tend to be kind of mangled and you have to kind of clean them out with a knife, but I figure, I can deal with that. So then I went into print a full panel. So the area the length of the street is about 28 inches. And my printer can print something about 7 inches. So I figure 4 panels, maybe a fifth, and I can do my street. Well, I pulled in some brick that I had. It's actually an old brick sidewalk and was going to just kind of cut out what I didn't need. The problem is that Tinkercad, when you get, I guess, that many individual little bricks and things, just locks up. You can see this thing in the bottom left corner saying loading document. Tinkercad just crashed on this. It just didn't know what to do with it. I said, okay, I don't really need the real small little bricks. I can do bigger bricks, which gives me fewer number of bricks for it to deal with. And if this doesn't work, maybe I'll go back to doing 3 pieces across, but I really didn't want to do that. One of the things when I looked up how to kind of solve some of this stuff is the suggestion was, well, take, just a few bricks like this and make it into one object, which is what I did here. And now I've got a custom object that I can replicate, and it's not 10 individual bricks, it's one entity. So I said, okay, let's give that a try. Well, that didn't work either. So come end of January, I was pretty discouraged. The Tinkercad was crashing. I was spending a lot of time making bricks and trying things and dealing with things. And I just kind of gave up for a couple of weeks. It just kind of burned me out. And I figured if nothing else, I've done joint compound with a putty knife to pave the street, and I've got brick sidewalks, and I'll deal with that. But, I decided to go back and try this whole thing kind of one more time. And I just started completely from scratch. The only thing I kept was this rail slot profile that you saw previously, because that was a real pain to do. I kept playing with dimensions so the rails would slide, but still give me the right gauge, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, ta-da, I have a brick panel. But you can see it's kind of interesting. There's still a bunch of little artifacts. You can see the top groove has these sticky outies and things like that. So there's still some problems with what the printer is doing. The good news, the slots are loose enough that I can slide rail in. So I took a piece of rail and I beveled the end at 45 degrees. So it's kind of like a chisel. And then I can just clean up these ends, because these ends you can see still get kind of garbled. But I could clean up the ends and then just run the rail through there as a chisel, and it cleans up the grooves and life is grand. And some of the bricks don't get printed properly, and for me that's okay. I'm modeling the 20s and 30s and 40s, and if things are a little bit crusty and misshapen, that's even better for me. And I also cleaned up the ends. I had to do that manually, but when I butt these things together, you can't see the seam. That's one of the nice things with bricks. And what I'm going to do is glue four of these together onto a substrate, a piece of 16th inch masonite, and then paint them all as one big thing. So the painting is continuous across the gaps. So I really think the gaps are going to be effectively invisible. So uh, finally, I was pretty happy with that. These things are nice. The only problem is, there's what, a couple thousand bricks on this panel, and the printer has to print each brick individually, and the bricks are about 3 layers thick. So this thing takes like 8 hours to print. It just takes forever, but I got it to print, and that's okay. And I'd also changed my printer filament, and that seemed to have helped. So the good news, I got the bricks. So now I need some structures to put in the street, because the structures that I had before were just placeholders. And I picked up this kit some time ago from Bar Mills, one of their limited production things. And I picked out two of the buildings, these two here, and built those. So those are like 95% finished. And I also had this building, it's a Carolina Craftsman kit from some time ago. And again, it's partially finished. I didn't want to put a lot of details on because I know I'm going to be handling this as I rearrange the structures and kind of arrange the street. So now I've got actually what turned out to be a nice little tracks in the street industrial area. The thing that I did is the buildings in back, as you notice, are arguably 3 stories tall, and everything in front is one, maybe two. I want to be able to see the street and see the buildings in back. So this worked out really good for that. And the area in front here, that the printed brick is just a placeholder for a little side alley. This is going to be junk, either an auto scrap yard or a general junk or something like that. And I'm pretty happy with this. And on the far left end, you can see the little road going to go up to a level in back that's going to be one step higher. Again, so you can see the buildings in back. And I ended up with this nice little recessed area, if you will, that there's a notch over here. This building has, the overhang, and this building has a lot of gap here. So I've got kind of a nice little open area, which I thought just fit in the area pretty well. So that's kind of where I am today. And again, another shot of what's going to be some kind of, line side junk and interest. And now I'm a happy camper. So I'll have more on this probably in a month or two, but that's where I am right now.
Curious, Earl, if you've tried this now to, those are straight pieces. Are you thinking you might extend it onto a curve?
I looked at that because I didn't quite know how to end the tracks in the street. Right. If you look at, let me see if I can go back. I looked at how the prototype ends up tracks in the street, and I'm just probably going to put a bumper at the end because the prototype doesn't have the problem of something falling 4 feet to the floor. You'd have to curve all the bricks individually, and that looks like a real pain in the butt. So maybe sometime later. For the same reason I didn't do a crown in the street, I was to the point where I just started doing it. And I don't know about you guys, I have X time in my life, and I'm trying to allocate my time properly.
And you just power the rails from one end, right? You don't power through the brick road.
No, I just power it from the far left end because that's the end that ties into the track work, and it's not in plastic. And it's one continuous length of rail, right? It's 28 inches, so a 36-inch rail is solid.
So one thing that I did when I did the framing, 3D printing the framing, is when you're joining two pieces together like that, you can actually, in the CAD drawing, put holes in them that match locations. And you put holes that are, around a millimeter, a little less than a millimeter, 0.8 millimeters in diameter. And then you can throw a little piece of brass rod in there on either side, and that holds everything nice and level.
Yeah.
Today's industry.
I've also got, the rail that's going to hold everything
That's
nice and
true.
level and straight. And if I glue it to, again, a piece of masonite, that's going to keep things solid and aligned, and I can play with it as I'm gluing it together.
Excellent.
Drinking warm water with cinnamon before bed.
Just wondering, thinking about gluing it to the masonite, the plastic will react to temperature different from the masonite. I don't know if how much temperature, it's indoors, I guess, right? So one is not going to expand versus the other if it's glued to the masonite. I would wonder about that.
Yeah, but I kind of got to glue it to something. Otherwise, these things are going to do this, right? I really want to make sure they're.
Well, yeah, that was the idea behind the brass pins.
That barge cement.
Yeah.
I would use epoxy. Epoxy works, mix up epoxy and spread it out and then hold it down with some heavy weights. That epoxy holds that kind of stuff really well versus other glues.
Yeah, I was thinking about Eileen's tacky glue because I know that's worked, but I was leaning toward epoxy also, just so it's all solid. And I'll probably just, glue one panel in and then let that set, then come back the next day and then do another panel.
Central Valley recommends you use barge cement just to hold their track down.
So what's barge cement, like contact cement?
What's barge? B-A-R-G-E.
Okay. I'll look it up. So that's what I got, Phil.
Cool. That was very good. Well, so that brings us to just open discussion of modeling. If anybody's got something to show from a modeling perspective. If anybody got anything interesting to talk to, or general discussions.
Well, I was thinking I don't usually show anything, but given that we're talking about 3D printing, I was going to show something. I've got, so the printing you've been doing, I think, Phil, has been, just a second. I want to turn off my background here if I'm going to show anything.
It's a little hash. Yeah, there you go. Well, you got it. You still got it. You got to turn it off completely. You can't have it.
The blur, I guess.
Yeah, you got to turn it off completely. Otherwise, it still tries to identify you.
Yeah, let me hang on a second here.
It's the little up arrow next to the video, and then it'll say background. If you click the little up arrow,
I did that. I've got the background, but it's
the upper left one, just the black one. We'll turn it all off.
Oh, I see.
There you go.
I thought there was an unblur, but yeah, it's just unclick the checkbox. Anyway, yeah, I was just going to say I've been doing 3D printing, but I've been doing it with a resin printer. And the reason I've been using the resin printer is for detail. I'm working on a model for a friend. I've talked to Earl about this, but I'm not sure here. I'm going to have to hold it up to the camera to see. This is an RS. This is actually, since I'm a CN modeler, I was doing this for a friend of mine who's a CN guy. In fact, you met him, Phil, George Carpenter, who sadly passed away about 6 months ago. I just learned. So I'm on the middle of this project for him, but I guess I'll get to keep these. But these were Montreal Locomotive Works RS locomotive, basically Alcos, but they had some custom pieces in them. And one of them was the fact that there were additional car body filters. So I'm going to, and I printed these, and this is really cool because you can see how fine the 3D printer will work. If I can get these to the camera here. There, you see the 3 on the end? There's 3 large filters. And then these 3 here were printed on the 3D printer down to just a few microns. I mean, this is, an HO scale model. So down to just a few microns. And my friend Mark Schutzer milled out, these are cast metal castings from Tiger Valley models. they're about 40 years old. George had these for like 40, 45 years or something, and asked if I could detail them up to look like the specific Montreal Locomotive Work RS11s and RS18s. This is an RS18, but I had to mill those out and print them, and they were able to print down to very fine detail using the resin printer. And then there was another detail that I just did, and I think I can show this. I've got to find the, it's hard to see because they're so tiny, but there's a detail, which is an overhanging bell. I got to pick these up with tweezers. This is the bell. I don't think we're going to be able to see this on the camera. Anyway, I'm not going to see it, but the bell is just a clunk of metal because it's a casting. And I was able to, and the bracket was very clunky. So I was able to 3D print, and this thing is only about 3 millimeters. I don't know how good the camera can do this here. It'll even focus in on it, but you can see how tiny this is. And I'm even able to get the clapper.
Pull it back a little bit. It won't focus. You got to pull it back just, yeah, there. Back just a little bit more.
Yeah.
A little bit more. The focal length, okay, there, that's better, like that. Yep.
Yeah, but you can see how tiny this thing is. It's got about, so you know, in fact, I just did something for Earl. I did some car pullers for him that he wanted me to do, actually for Dave Lovelace's layout. But this has got something like 800 layers in it of resolution for the whole thing. And what that's allowing me to do is, you know, print that bell. In fact, what was cool, Earl, I told you I moved away from Tinkercad to Fusion. And so that was one of my first drawings in Fusion. And the Fusion was very cool. It let me, I had a photo of an Elco bell, and I was able to take that shape, make the bell, make the clapper, make the bracket, and then print it. So I think this is a really cool thing with modeling. I'm gonna hopefully do more of this you know, especially when I'm working with something like CN details. There's not a lot of them out there. So being able to do custom details, that custom bell and that custom grills, 3D printing, I think, is just a great thing to have. It's a long learning curve. I'm still learning Fusion, which is really powerful, but pretty complex. I don't know if you're using Fusion, Phil, for your 3D drawings. I know you're still using Tinkercad. I mentioned Fusion to you, Earl, but the car puller you gave me in Tinkercad was really well drawn. So you seem to be becoming quite expert with Tinkercad.
So just let me share my screen here for a minute. So this is the thing that Charlie was talking about.
Ah, there it is.
That we did for Dave Lovelace. And you know, it was interesting. You know, you can see from the sketch, it's got, you know, all these nuts and bolts and little details and things like that. And these all resolved, and it actually printed really well. This is about 3 foot tall in HO. Again, just to give you a feel for how big things are. So you can do some, you know, pretty detailed stuff with Tinkercad. The nice thing with this, it's all basically cylinders and squares, so it goes pretty good. If you're doing things more organic, then it's kind of not so good. But you know, this came out.
Yeah, they're only about, you know, half an inch tall. So
Yeah,
what I have what I have to say is that, you know, having watched Tinkercad and watched, you know, what Earl's done with it, what Fran Foley has done with it. There's a guy who's got a site called Phil's Trains. He's up out of Washington, southern end by Vancouver. And they all three do Tinkercad. And I've got to say, for 98%, 99% of anything you'd ever want to do in model railroading, Tinkercad is probably great. And the difference is the drawing packages require a lot of learning of how to draw and extrude and go through processes, where Tinkercad is just assembling shapes on a build plate. And the cool thing about it is you can group the shapes and you can manage them. I mean, it's designed to let young people, i.e. kids, start approaching these tools effectively. And I think for most model railroaders, it's all you'll ever need. And if you think about it, it's a free program. And if you buy a
Bill, it's
filament
no
printer,
longer free.
Tinkercad?
Tinkercad? Really? Since when?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody charges these days.
no, Tinkercad is free. It's a free application that it's a web-based application, so you have to use your browser, but it is free, and it's really designed as an on-ramp to the Fusion 360. It's designed to get young people using it, and then when you want to do more than you can with Tinkercad, if you want to do a fantasy figure, you're not going to be able to probably to do it in Tinkercad. Then you move to the Fusion 360. So, but like I said, for most model railroad things, it's quite sufficient, I believe.
It is.
I,
The nice thing about it too, if other people have it, and I've done this with Fran Foley numerous times and with Charlie, I just send them the file and they can edit it if they need to and print it, and it works great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tinkercad's a great. It is pretty good, but I struggled with it. I think I told you, Earl. I'm trying to do these custom handrails again. CN has these custom handrails, and trying to draw the handrail in Tinkercad and getting the curves right and getting the bends right and the piping was very tricky. And Fusion
It
makes
has its limitations.
yeah, but Fusion
that,
made it really easy, actually.
yep. So I'll share two pictures, and then I've got I got another topic that's actually, I think, kind of related to the 3D printing. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen here. So I wanted to show this. This is my, I did this picture I took before I put the lighting in. I put a 4-foot, three kind of almost tube LED fluorescent light with some hangers over it. But this is my new workbench. And it's designed where this is actually a Huffy workbench. It's pretty cool. It actually has a crank and it goes up and down. So it goes from a lower level up about 9 inches higher. It's got these two drawers that are great because you can put all your paints and all your what I'll call these are true color. They won't fit. They're too big around, but all your craft paints and all the Vallejo paints and all that kind of stuff will fit in these drawers. So I put some organizers in the drawers. And then I built a backing here. This is actually just out of plywood. And then these upper pieces here, this piece here, and the tool racks over here. Now, this all comes down off the top and sets down. And then when you lower it all the way down, the whole thing will slide underneath this module. So I can put it away, and it takes about 10 minutes to put it underneath the layout. So I can actually hide it away when I have people over. And this is my kind of other cabinet that rolls out that's got this is something I bought at the auction that has a drill press and some other tools and then a sander. So I've kind of got a full little workshop, and I decided to put it in my train room. I had it in my laundry room before, and the workbench was about less than half the size of this workbench. And the problem was it was in a room with no windows, kind of in the middle of the house, kind of locked away. And now I have a great view out the window. And so one of the projects you can see I'm doing is I'm kind of to the point where the layout's ready for operations. You can see I've made these 3D printed. These are Waybill card holders. And I put those all around. They're done now for all the parts of the layout. And so now I have to get all my cars done. You can see there are cars here. So Richard Brennan printed me out some decals. So I am now decaling cars and getting them ready for loads and stuff like that. So I did want to show you something else that I thought was really interesting. This is a company called West Edge 3D. They're actually an Australian company. But what they do, they've bought a printer. And if you read on the site, it tells you what brand it is. I went and looked at the printer, and they're like $100,000 plus 3D printer. But they are kind of a color resin printer, and they're capable of printing 640,000 different colors. And so if you look in here, I'll do the HO scale. I mean, it takes a second, by the way, because the website's obviously in Australia. But, these are things that they have printed. Now, a lot of them are Australian prototypes, but they're getting more US prototypes coming in. But this is just amazing because what it does, and I actually talked to the guy who runs the company, and we're going to have him on New Tracks and talk a bit about it, about the process they go through. But what he's doing is he's using, basically third-party contractors to do a lot of these designs, and then they 3D print them, and they're essentially pretty much the same kind of cost as you would pay for a painted figure. But when you look at it, the quality of the details in them are just amazing. They're
So
getting
Phil, the color is molded.
Yeah, almost look as good as Model U UK.
right. What they do is they print a white figure, and then the outside layer is printed, and it's actually the color is printed into the print.
Wow.
So I mean, they're
Yeah,
just
same thing.
I thought they were
Wow.
just really
Color
amazing.
printing.
That's astonishing.
Figures.
I mean, astonishing looking things. Now, the other thing
Wow.
that I got this email. I want to show you this. This is from Model U. I don't know if you have Model U.
Yeah, Model U.
And so we actually just ordered the ON30 group. We ordered some of their STLs, and Fran and one of our other members are actually trying to print them. And they're good, but again, they print in gray resin, so you have to paint them. And painting figures and doing a great job of painting figures is very hard. So these guys basically seem to have gotten the same kind of printer. There are a couple of manufacturers of these kind of printers, and I just saw this announcement of full color TT scale crews. And you look at some of the pictures here again, they're pretty
Model
good.
U is one other thing. They scan people in
Right.
costume.
Right.
And then they turn them into a figure to print.
Right. And what they're doing is they're again doing the same thing of printing in color, in 3D color. So these are, two figures for $17. Now these are in TT. So I'm assuming if you go to HO, they'd probably be a little bit more. The guy who talked to in Australia said that the colored ink resins for this are like $600 a liter. So it's not a cheap process, but that price will continue to come down as the market changes. And I just thought it's incredibly transformational for our hobby because the problem with any traditional methodology is the tooling costs are a huge cost. And then if you want painted figures, some human being has to paint them. So you add up, especially if it's lower volume in terms of the number of products you're going to sell, the cost of the tooling plus the cost of the human effort to paint something becomes pretty significant. When you get to this point where somebody can design it in 3D and then you can print it in color, it's a pretty amazing process. So I think we're going to see some amazing transformations the next couple of years with these processes. Obviously not a hobbyist tool at $100,000 plus purchase price. If there's someone who'd like to buy one of these, I'd love to be your friend.
Maybe we can get Richard to do that. He can do the color.
Can I just show one little thing?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. One of the things that Tony Thompson just blogged about recently was his tank loads on a flat car. Well, I model, as we talked about recently, Port Costa, and it's on the Sacramento to Oakland main line in 1951. So we have all of these tanks going to Korea. And this one is a prototype M46. It's the newest tank in 1948 to 51 for the U.S. Army. And I found somebody in, of all places, Walla Walla, Washington, who has a company called the Miniature Tank Company. And these are all 3D prints.
Yeah, fantastic.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing.
It's going to be 4 New York Central tank cars or flat cars. as the tanks were built at a place in Warren, Michigan.
So it's printed with the treads and everything all printed together, huh?
Printed? Yeah. It comes as about a 6-piece kit, and you just put the things together. The only thing they didn't have was this little thing on the holding. It's called a travel lock, and all of your armored vehicles have these to hold the main gun in place while you're moving it in rail or even just driving it around the motor pool. I was in 3rd Armored Division. I sort of got to know these things. Anyway, it's as I say, the trouble was fine. They had M47s. You could get the old Roco models. There are all sorts of other things that were available in the old Roco plastic, but the M46, which was the primary one, main tank, medium tank that was going to Korea, I had to really scrounge for this one.
Nice. 6 pieces is a little more than what's in a Tamiya kit.
Hey,
no, it's great.
But again, I think the point
it
that's
was the tracks, 2 pieces for the hull, 2 pieces for the turret, the main gun.
Hey, I think that's fantastic. I mean, it's a load. I mean, my brother builds tank models because that's his primary thing, and then a Tamiya kit with 500 parts is what he wants. But you want a load. That's a great thing to have on a military cargo.
I just wanted an HO scale model,
Right.
and that was hard to come by.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think that's the amazing thing about 3D printing is because you eliminate the tooling costs. I mean, the only cost for that is the design cost. And if you do it right, depending on the tool used, especially if you use, if you're a pro, most of the pros do actually use something like Fusion 360. I mean, I've actually used FreeCAD, which is the open source version. But if you're going to do it professionally, I mean, using something like Fusion 360 makes sense. You basically do the design once, and you can now produce it in multiple scales.
Yeah. Another place to look is Scale Structures. They're doing a line of vehicles. They're about $18 a piece, but they're really fine prints. I've got 3. I'll show you next week or next time we do this.
You were saying something?
Where else am I going to find a 1940s Ford sedan?
Well, I've got something to share. I've been working on laying NN3 track. So I started off with a small piece of track. I'm basically printed circuit board ties every 4 or 5 ties. Then I CA wooden ties to the bottom of the rail, and then this was my first piece of test track. So the interesting thing about this is on 1/8" Luan plywood, which is recommended by the N3 group. So for this, I cut the grains against the grain straight, and it was perfect. But when I tried doing a big curve, I ended up with the top layer of the lawn plywood splintered off. And so although this was a great test track, it doesn't really work. So I ended up I'm using 1/4" hardwood plywood as a road bed, and I'm going to write this up for the coast modeling. But I'm basically make jigs out of wood and 20,000 styrofoam. I use those to create NN3 track, and then this is my current project, which is a 9" radius half circle, because if I have 2 of these and 2 straights, I have the canonical initial layout. And given that I'm hand laying track, I mean, a lot of people think, well, what's an oval all about? how exciting is that? In small scales, you have to break in locomotives a lot more than in large scales. So I can't just have a short piece of track. And frankly, once I have, because this is laid on a piece of plywood, I can embed it on, put it on foam and create an oval. And then as I create more pieces of track like this, I can rearrange them to create a more complex layout. So the jig that I built for the curve probably wouldn't 3D print well, but this only took about an hour and a half to make. I've got about 2.5 hours to make this, maybe 3. So I'm just about done with my explorative, like figuring out how to do it stage. And then I'm going to start cranking out. I'm going to crank out another half circle. I'm going to crank out 2 pieces of 2-foot straight, and I'm going to put that on a 2x4-foot module and call that my initial NN3 layout. So I was going to write this up for the next coast modeling with some more pictures so I could show you guys what I'm doing. But the one thing that I found that was interesting is that even though the track, so I lay the track on the jig and then I go to put it on the roadbed and the track sprung out just a little bit. I thought that the ties would hold it in perfect shape and that it would retain the exact shape of the jig, but the track relaxed slightly after I took it out of the jig, and I have to bring in the ends on this by about 1/8 of an inch to sort of get them back centered again. So I'm just learning, but this is what I've been working on for the last week.
I'm amazed with all the fixturing. That's incredible.
Well, it's all about fixturing, and I was going to use aluminum because aluminum obviously it won't have any problems with solder. And then I thought, wow, that's a lot of work to cut that many pieces of aluminum. If I did it with styrene, I could use my Northwest Shortline chopper and just chop little pieces of styrofoam like crazy. And I found out that because the printed circuit board ties are delicate and I'm not ham-fisted with a soldering iron, I'm not using a 100-watt soldering iron, I'm using a small tip soldering iron, I was able to solder rails in the jig without damaging the jig at all. The only thing that I found is I can't use the tip of the soldering iron to nudge a printed circuit board tie because then I touch the jig. So if I have to nudge something around, I have to do it with a pick or a tweezer. But I decided that I was going to do an oval, straight track first. Then I was going to do a half circle. Then the next thing I'm going to do after the half circle is a stub switch because North Pacific Coast Railway uses stub switches. And then the next thing in my experiment is a 3-way stub switch because North Pacific Coast uses 3-way stub switches. And then I'll proceed to work on what's more of a layout.
So what size rails have code 55 or code 40?
Code 40.
Ooh.
The NN3 guys actually use down to code 30, which is actually drawn wire. It doesn't look like railhead.
Right, exactly.
It looks gorgeous, but no thank you. So I actually have Railcraft rail from when I was a freshman in college because I never throw stuff away, right? You never throw train stuff away, ever, ever, ever. So I've got rail so I'm just building stuff with stuff I bought 40 years ago. So.
Just a minute, is Earl still on?
Something interesting. This is
oh my goodness.
This is fast
Fast
come on.
tracks.
Fast tracks. So they sell NN3 turnout fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
And they sell curved track fixtures.
Yep.
A lot more expensive than what you built.
So
and straight track fixtures. So
scrap wood and
styrene
on hand. So the other problem is their switch kits aren't stub switch kits.
You can actually use them.
I just have one thing for Earl.
Oh, Bard.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take a look.
And I get this at an Ace Hardware.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks like contact cement.
Yeah, I think it's contact cement. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's like a super contact that allows a little flexibility until it fully dries.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I looked at the fast track stuff, but I decided that I could easily spend $1,000 there to get started. And right now I'm on a budget, and I thought to myself, hey, I
Oh
can
yeah.
make jigs out of styrene. I've got easy to get track patterns. Where am I? Track patterns, easy to get track patterns. I'm doing a stub switch, so I don't need the point filing system anyway, because I don't have points. So I looked at the fast track stuff carefully. I'm actually buying my printed circuit board ties from the 2mm Association out of England because they make great pre-gapped NN3 ties, and they're significantly cheaper than fast track. So I like the fast track stuff. It just seemed pricey to me, and I decided that I was going to make jigs from styrene.
Cool.
I think the write-up for that would be great.
Absolutely.
It's going to be an article.
You and Dave
well,
Evans are the fixture gurus.
It'll show first. It'll show first on Coast Modeling on the April 4th or
April
something
4th.
like that. Yeah, that'll be.
Get it to me by Thursday or Friday. Thursday or Friday before that.
Yeah.
So like
no
the
worries.
second, get it to me by the 2nd so I can throw it in the slides. Well, I hate to say this, but I have to run. I've got a CCC work session today, and I stayed home to do our meeting this morning, and I've got to go do that. And before I do it, I've got to drop some dogs off at my son's. So, is somebody going to hang on for a while? Jesse, are you going to be here for a little while? If so, I'll make you the host, and I will drop off.
Actually, I've got some stuff that I have to start doing there, so I'm going to have to bug out also. It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I need to bug out
Me
also,
too.
Bill.
We just want to call it a day then?
Yep.
Let's call it a
Sounds
day.
like.
We'll call it a day. Well, thanks
It was a
everyone.
great day.
Good session.
And
Good
I hope
session,
everyone here sends something in for April 4th, and we'll have a great, I mean, the more we have, the merrier, and it's an easy way to do it. You don't have to share. You just send me some photos and I'll put it in. Send me a photo of yourself if you can too, so I can put you in. That way people know who it is when we present it. But what we'll do is, if you go back and watch the video, what we do is basically go through the slides. So if you send me 3 pictures, it'll be 3 slides with your pictures on it. And then what we'll do is have you come on and describe what you sent in. So we'll see everybody on April 4th. Have a great one. Adios.
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 See you then. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye now.
Bill.
Bye.